Okay, wonderful. Dear partners and friends, welcome to the Resilience Hub, the official home of the Race to Resilience. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you all to today's event, Advancing Agency, Equity, and Inclusion for Adaptation. My name is Maria Aguilar. I'm the Race to Resilience campaign manager. And special thanks to our partners, Sanitation Water for All, the Government of Australia, Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, and the University of Technology of Sydney for convening this important event with us. The climate crisis is a human rights crisis. Climate change multiplies and amplifies existing inequalities, turning development gaps into survival gaps. It hits hardest those least responsible, women, children, youth, indigenous people, and local communities at the front lines of the climate crisis. These groups face scaling risks that trap them in a cycle of vulnerability and exclusion. Yet, they are also powerful agents of transformation. Thank you. Excellent. Leadership driving local and global action forward. Putting people at the heart of climate action has been the mission of the Race to Resilience since its launch back in 2021 on the road to Glasgow, to bring adaptation and resilience at the same level of mitigation and net zero, mobilizing non-state actors to strengthen the resilience of 4 billion people by 2030. In today's event, we will spotlight how diverse actors are advancing gender, equity, agency, and inclusion to deliver lasting and equitable adaptation outcomes. It is now my pleasure to invite Nigar Paradari, the climate change high-level champion for COP29, to provide opening remarks. Thank you, Nigar.
Good afternoon, dear friends. It's great to be here. Resilience Hub Pavilion feels like home because every time we have COP or any other big events, we are trying to come here because it's so important what you are doing, guys. And I represent COP29, and it's great to be in Belém, actually, in Amazonia, because this is the lungs of our Earth. And here you can feel how nature talks to you and what we are fighting for, actually, what we are trying to save. And yes, as Maria has pointed out, thank you, yeah. As Maria has pointed out already, the Race to Resilience is here with a clear mission, helping billions of people around the world. And as COP29 team, we also tried to take, all these actors that you put, equity and inclusion, as the main principles of our works. So as you remember, the main idea behind the COP29, the main subject was finance, because finance it's something we all need to make this green transition. So that was it, and I'm happy to say that as we see, there is this 300 billion that was agreed, and throughout this week we have been working together with COP30 and COP29 presidencies to come up with Baku to Belém roadmap to scale it up to 1.3 trillion. Now, when we speak about the global climate action, we need to understand that we are not speaking only about, negotiations. We don't speak only about commitments. We need to take into consideration people. Whatever decisions are taken and the governments are making commitments, it will all be impacting people's lives. So how are we considering it? How we consider women and children, marginalized groups, and all the rest. So that's why I think that should be the main aspect of our kind of question and mission that we do. As high-level champion, one of the campaigns that I and my team have launched was the Impact Makers. So what we tried to do, we tried to showcase the real stories of people who made impact to their communities. These are the ordinary people doing some projects, some startup ideas that came up with some solutions in their communities. And in many cases, they remain unacknowledged. Their stories are not being heard. So we've given them a platform, and I am happy to see many impact makers being at this COP on sharing their stories, doing impact to their communities. And I think that we need to engage and empower these people. I was a great supporter of support to small and medium enterprises, because this is the aspect that in many cases is being forgotten. Because we speak about regulations, we come up with new restrictions, and this impacts lives of entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs as well. So that was something that we were pushing for. And this week we are working together throughout all these months. We've been working with COP30 presidency, with my colleague Dan Yoshpe, and we have put together the 5-year plan, Unified Action Agenda. And I think that what COP30 presidency has done makes it's a very common sense idea to bring together all the initiatives that has been done so far and that has been lost maybe, to come up with understanding of what is working, what is not. So this Unified Action Agenda that you will hear a lot throughout this 2 weeks is a good frame for the upcoming presidencies. And throughout all these access and thematic groups, there are many subjects that are being covered there. But the equity, inclusion, and agency in adaptation, as you put it here in this let's say, subject of this event, is there throughout all the subjects. So it's not some single-sided idea. You should be inclusive when you speak about green skills, when you speak about oceans, when you speak about agriculture, private sector engagement. So that's something that should be there all the way. So that's why I'm thanking you for inviting me again, and thanks for all you are doing. I think that we need to really push it forward and always remind that we are fighting for nature, we are fighting for climate, but people's lives should be at the center. We need to do what we can to make sure that as a result of green transition, people thrive, not survive, not only survive it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Nigar, for reminding us that climate action starts and ends with people, and that we have a unique opportunity through the action agenda to accelerate adaptation action. Now, it is my absolute honor to welcome Her Excellency Michelle Bachelet, Vice President of the Club de Madrid, member of the Sanitation and Water for All Global Leadership Council, former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and former President of Chile, to deliver today's keynote address. Her Excellency, the floor is yours.
A lot of former things, but I have a very real commitment with these issues. Well, distinguished colleagues, esteemed partners, honorable guests, dear friends. It is a privilege for me to speak before this distinguished gathering at the Race to Resilience event hosted within the COP30 Resilient Hub. I'm really deeply honored to stand alongside fellow leaders dedicated to advancing climate adaptation that is grounded in justice, equity, and inclusion. Having devoted my life to advocating for human rights, of gender equality, and the inherent dignity of every person, the intersection of climate change, gender, and access to water and sanitation resonates profoundly with me. My own journey from enduring exile as a young woman to becoming Chile's first female president, and later serving as UN Women Executive Director and the UN High Commissioner of Human Rights, has taught me that justice is never static. It must be defended and renewed in changing times. Climate change is not only an environmental crisis, it is a human crisis, it's a human rights crisis. It reshapes how people live and how rights, especially the fundamental rights to water and sanitation, are realized. These rights are essential to the health. I'm a medical doctor, so for me this is also a very important thing. Dignity and well-being of all. When they are denied, inequality deepens and development unravels. Women and girls are disproportionately affected, walking farther for water, bearing the weight of unpaid care, and facing heightened health and safety risk. Yet they're also at the forefront of solutions, leading community adaptation, managing scarce resources, and rebuilding social fabrics when disasters strike. This gathering aligns with COP30's action agenda, particularly Access 5, which rightly emphasizes that climate action must be people-centered, and I quote, fostering human and social development through equity, participation, and adaptive system designed to serve communities at the front lines of climate impacts. It also connects with Axis 4, which called for resilience building across cities, infrastructure, and water systems. Together, these axes underscore that protecting human well-being and advancing social justice depend on strengthening the resilience of the critical systems, urban infrastructure, and water that sustain life, health, and dignity amid climate change. Adaptation and resilience are therefore not just technical goals, but imperatives of justice. Achieving them requires inclusive governance and strong social protection systems that truly leave no one behind. Women are essential leaders and innovators and stewards of resilience, not merely victims of climate change and water insecurity. Their leadership in water management, sanitation innovation, and community-driven adaptation is essential for building sustainable and just societies. To achieve transformative adaptation, gender-responsive policies must dismantle structural inequalities in water and sanitation governance and make gender equality a mandatory, measurable component of all climate-resilient water and sanitation services. Non-state actors, particularly women's organizations, indigenous, and grassroots movements, are already leading the way. Their solutions, grounded in lived experience and demanding equitable resource governance, prove that equity and efficiency go hand in hand. Their voices must not only be heard, but empowered in decision-making and resource allocation. Today marks the launch of an important policy brief, Converging Crises and Potential Opportunities, Gender, Climate, Sanitation, and Water. This evidence-based document highlights a clear message. There can be no resilient future without women's full and equal participation. It calls for bold financing, inclusive governance, and strength capacity to recognize and support women's leadership in adaptation. I urge governments to fully integrate gender transformative water and sanitation targets into their national adaptation plans and national determined contribution. Climate finance mechanisms must be scaled up to support gender-responsive initiatives that prioritize women and marginalized groups. Together, through meaningful partnerships and sustained political commitment, we can build climate-resilient water, sanitation, and hygiene systems that uphold dignity, equity, and human rights of all, advancing a just and inclusive climate agenda. For me, this is more than policy. It is profoundly personal. Through the collective leadership and experience of Club de Madrid, we remain committed to fostering cooperation and supporting those who are driving transformative, people-centered climate action across the world. Let us make this race to resilience a race for justice, for equality, and for humanity. Muito obrigada.
Thank you very much, President, for these inspiring words. You leave us with a crucial message. Adaptation and resilience are not just technical terms, are justice imperatives. I would like to now invite you for a family photo. So, Nigar, if you can join us. President, please. Marcia. Primero ellas dos. Thank you very much. This was a great start to our event. So for the next segment, I'm pleased to welcome Marcia Toledo, Adaptation and Resilience Director with the Climate Champions team, to moderate the first dialogue. Marcia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Fantastic start for our conversation. And now it's my pleasure to invite Anjani Kapoor, Head of Policy for Sanitation Water for All, and Christy McNichol, Executive Director of Australian Department of Foreign Affairs. Where is it? No? Where is it? Oh, yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Perfect. So I would like to start with Anjani Kapoor. And in this opportunity of launching the Converging Crisis and Potential Opportunities Gender, Climate, Sanitation and Water Policy Brief, Anjani, what key insights does this brief reveal about how gender-responsive water and sanitation systems can drive resilience, equity?
Thank you. Is it audible? Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you, Marcia, and good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests and partners and colleagues. It's such a privilege to represent Sanitation and Water for All today. We are a partnership of over 500 members with 80 governments and rest civil society actors, donors, private sectors, research and learning institutions, utilities and regulators. We are working to ensure water and sanitation for all, always, everywhere. And we keep human rights to water and sanitation advocacy at the heart of our work. As we gather here at COP30 and the fans are wagging continuously, we know and we recognize that climate change is no longer a distant reality. It is already exacerbating the existing vulnerabilities in the society, especially for women, girls, marginalized communities, and indigenous people. Growing up in India, the sight of a woman carrying water on their head was a day-to-day lived reality, right? And to that familiar sight, if I put the lens of climate change, we know that then these women and girls have to walk an extra mile. And we know that climate change is only going to worsen droughts and deplete water resources. And by 2050, it is expected that that distance is going to increase 30% for women and girls. Now, turning to the policy brief, which we've worked on with UTS Sydney, the government of Australia, it presents three key insights that I want to showcase today. First is access to safe water and sanitation as climate adaptation. Now that we are in climate space, we can't just think about water and sanitation as services. They are the very lifeline of climate adaptation and resilience. And when women and girls spend less time to collect water or have access to safe, flood-resilient sanitation at home, communities are better prepared to deal with the climate shocks. Second is gender equality as both means and outcomes of resilience. Empowering women in decision-making spaces at home, at the community level, and also at the policy level leads to more effective and inclusive planning, both for women in the community, but also generally in schools for the girls as well. Third point is integrated policy is essential. We cannot be in our silos anymore. That has not served us in the last decade. Right, so aligning climate finance with gender policy and water and sanitation systems help us towards a shared agenda that we move forward from these fragmented interventions and move towards a transformative approach that President Bachelet was also referring to, which is to look at these underlying systemic inequalities and then put a gender lens on it.
Thank you very much, Anjani, for the clear message of the reality, connecting the reality with the opportunity that can bring this policy brief, especially by addressing system transformation. And now, Christy, how is Australian aid supporting local systems and partnerships that breach gender equality, climate adaptation?
Thank you. Thanks very much, and thanks very much for the microphone as well. That was very helpful. First of all, thank you very much for inviting Australia to be a part of this event today. It's been a real privilege to have been involved in this piece of research and be at the launch of this policy note. So thank you very much. I've got to say it's an absolute. Oh, sorry. It's an absolute honour to be here with the former president of Chile, who, even in Australia, we all know the name and recognise you as such a leader in this space. So thank you very much for your support. And thank you all so much, Anjali, for your work in bringing this vital policy brief to fruition. You know, I think the points that you've just highlighted there are absolutely essential. And, you know, as much as we sort of have known about these issues for many, many years, both, you know, the policy brief as well as your anchoring in your lived experience in India, I think are important messages for us to really remember and take to heart as we think about the impacts that climate change has on gender. Gender equality, disability and social inclusion, or GEDSI in the Australian context, along with climate, are key priorities of Australia's development program. They feature really prominently in our most international development policy. And indeed, there are actually two twin policies, there's only two of them, that are cross-cutting across our entire international development program. Our international development policy sets out dual requirements for development investments of $3 million and above to include gender equality and climate change objectives in all of our programming. So this means that by 2029, most Australian development investments across all sectors will include outcomes that target both gender equality and climate change. This really means that we do have mainstreaming of both of these issues at the heart of our development program in recognition of just how vitally important climate change and addressing gender equality are. We're deeply committed to maintaining global progress on gender equality, including sexual and reproductive health and rights. Our international gender equality strategy, which was released in February this year, reaffirms this commitment. At the time, Australia's Foreign Minister, Senator the Honourable Penny Wong, noted gender equality is not just a special interest. Gender equality is a matter of national interest. And so this is why gender equality is just so important to Australia. Our strategy recognises that to be effective, climate resilient water must also be inclusive and clearly states that gender equality and climate action are mutually reinforcing in exactly the sort of way that you were describing. I think everyone here has observed and seen all of the data which really reinforces the idea that climate crises are often water related. So, you know, we see particularly in the Pacific region, but this is not exclusive to our region, the impact that floods, droughts, cyclones and salt intrusion have on communities and in particular women. So this makes our focus on gender, climate and water and that nexus between all of those issues just so fundamentally important to building resilience. I'll just mention one of our programs, which is Water for Women. It's reached over 4.4 million direct beneficiaries, including more than 2 million women and girls with inclusive climate resilient wash across the Indo-Pacific. It's really shown us how inclusive wash can be an absolute vehicle for lasting gender outcomes. The brief that we've launched today reminds us the essential truth that we cannot achieve climate resilience without functional sanitation and water systems, along with gender equality, disability and social inclusion. We're really pleased that it really highlights some of the challenges within this nexus around recognising the interlinkages between gender, intersectionality, water and sanitation and climate adaptation, fostering multi-stakeholder collaboration, building institutional capacity in low-income nations to deliver gender-responsive, climate-resilient services, and really enhancing gender-responsive climate finance, as you mentioned, for water and sanitation. One of my roles back home in Canberra is climate finance, and as I say, without money we can have as much talk as we want, but it's just talk. So, you know, we really do need that. There is a demand for urgent action in this space. We are committed to being part of the solution. We're incredibly pleased to be a part of this, and we're also really proud of the work that UTS, the Institute of Sustainable Futures, has done in being involved in this. So thank you everyone, including our Australian university partners, and Water and Sanitation for All. It's a real privilege.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Christy, for truly reflecting a cross-cutting, mainstream, and expanding, connecting policy with action, with partnerships, so that gender, water, equality, and adaptation are very well connected. And Dani, my next question to you is, we've spoke about the opportunity on the policy brief, and as well the opportunity from mainstreaming policies. How do we ensure that findings like this don't remain at policy level, but translate into measurable improvements in resilience?
That's a great question, Marcia, and also an important one. And I would like to highlight two examples from sanitation and water for all. It is a critical question, and why I was saying that, because this is being called an implementation COP. So we need to walk the talk, right? So the first example that I would like to highlight is the key effort from the Sanitation and Water for All partnership, which is the High-Level Leaders Compact on Water Security and Resilience, which was launched just a couple of weeks ago in Madrid at the 2025 Sector Ministers meeting. This meeting was hosted by the government of Spain and was co-convened by UNICEF and Sanitation Water for All. And within 2 weeks, we have received 27 endorsements from the governments, and 23 organizations have joined us in this short span. Now, why I'm mentioning the compact? Because it talks about three commitments. First is on policy and institutional integration, which also links very well with the gender policy brief. The second one is on finance that you were talking about, which makes the world go round. And the third one is on inclusion and human rights. So let's look at and zoom into this third commitment that the compact is highlighting. The compact reaffirms the human rights to water and sanitation, and there's no human rights with without gender equality in the center. And the ministers who have endorsed the compact have endorsed this commitment, saying that they need to strengthen the disaggregated data collection and monitoring, which is critical to understand who exactly is left behind. And ministers have also committed to social inclusion and gender responsive approaches. So this is the first example that I would like to highlight, because these are not separate considerations or peripheral issues to water security and resilience. And one of the reasons why I'm also mentioning Madrid Compact, because endorsement is just first foot in the door, right? And we have a work that is starting now. So the Compact acts as the strategic bridge from the commitments that we've taken in Madrid with the Compact to the actions that we are advocating for here at COP30 in Belém, and what we are looking forward in the line of sight with the UN Water Conference, and more importantly, the midpoint of it, the SDG 6 review. So we will be taking forward these discussions from the compact and keeping the recommendations from this policy brief high on our agenda as well. The second example, and before I wrap up, because as we've been saying, this is an implementation COP. Yesterday, with Ministry of Cities Brazil, we launched the definition 2.0 of climate resilient water sanitation services, along with the response framework, because that is critical for implementation. And this response framework focuses on gender equality and social inclusion. So again, you'll see that we have been strategically linking the work that we are already doing and strengthening it further with the recommendations from the gender policy brief. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Anjani, for such clear description of the opportunities to showcase implementation. So, as well, Christy, we'll be keen to learn what examples from Australia regional cooperation show how investments in wash, housing, or infrastructure can advance both climate resilience and social justice.
Thanks very much for that. Yeah, look, so this is one of the real key issues that we have tried to focus on in our program over the last few years, particularly as we've mainstreamed both gender and climate change into our program. The Water for Women program, which we invested about $160 million over 7 years into, has been one of the key instrumental pieces where we have really tried to delve into this question. And it really demonstrates the power of long-term partnerships and investment, rather than sort of those quite sporadic, short-term project-based approaches, which I think, we all understand the limitations of that kind of approach.
Yes, thank you.
So over the course of the 7 years, we supported 20 WASH projects that reached 4.3 million people. Some examples of the kinds of things that we managed to achieve there were all obviously focused in the Indo-Pacific region, because that's where Australia's focus very much is. And so in Indonesia, for instance, we worked with Plan International on menstrual health and hygiene training, which, is often just such a taboo topic, but it unsurprisingly affects 50% of the world for, decades and decades. And I think using affect is probably exactly the wrong word there. Sorry. Even just creating safe spaces for people to talk about those kinds of taboo topics is just really important, and we managed to reach 11,000 women and girls through that kind of program. In Vanuatu, we worked with World Vision's Latam Dakona project, which once again also addressed the taboos of menstrual health. And this one was a bit of a different project in that it also worked with men and boys, and sort of trying to, I guess, break down some of those gender-based taboos around menstrual health and menstrual hygiene. We were really privileged to work with the Department of Water Resources in that context to make safer toileting spaces, including safer latrines. And so, it's those kinds of really basic things, I think, that we often forget about as being just so vitally important, but can really be quite transformational to people's lives.
Fantastic. Thank you both for these wonderful reflections, clarity, and the opportunity to continue to mainstream and advance this agenda of gender equity and water. Thank you. We'll be inviting the next panelists, and thank you again, welcoming both of you. And now it's my pleasure to have a dialogue on advancing agency, equity, and inclusion in adaptation. So I'm inviting Cristiane Gomez Julião, from a co-founder of the Amiga Network, Indigenous leader, women movement of Global Alliance Territorial Communities. Please, if you can come to the... Ariana Karamalis. Thank you. Ariana Karamalis is Global Advocacy and Development Manager from Build Change. Sorry. And Gabriela Arrastua from Techo. Yeah, don't have to. Perfect, exacto. Donde quisieras. Sí. Yo sí. Yo me quedo acá para el lado del aire. Sí, ahí. No hay problema. Sí, yo estoy acá. Yo hablo de acá, no hay problema. No, está muy bien, no pasa nada. Thank you very much. This dialogue is very critical because we want to reflect on those opportunities of action, of perspective on different sectors. So I'm going to start with Christiane Gomez-Julião. Indigenous women are often the first responders to climate impacts. How can adaptation frameworks better recognize and fund their leadership at a territorial level?
Thank you. Bom, primeiro, muito obrigada por esse momento. Boa tarde, mulheres e não mulheres. Bem-vindos ao Brasil e a esse calor intenso.
First of all, thank you very much. Good afternoon, women, non-women. Welcome to Brazil in this crazy heat.
Esse é um exercício, com certeza, de adaptação. O calor que cada uma tem sentido é nesse lugar também de adaptação que a gente vem se reconfigurando a cada momento, a cada empreendimento, a cada projeto, a cada política pública que é impulsionada sem consulta, claro, não se tem consulta, mas como as políticas públicas são reverberadas nas nossas realidades. Então, essa adaptação ela é constante.
This is an exercise on adaptation. This is an exercise the same way that we adapt to each project, each public policy that, of course, has no consultation and the impact that it has in the long term.
Adaptação a modelos, adaptação a sistemas, adaptação a contextos, é uma constante. Então, assim, a gente tem tentado construir projetos a partir desses modelos de adaptação que a gente aprende a partir do nosso modo de vida e que vem se reverberando na perspectiva do cuidado. É sempre na ideia do cuidado, da cura, da proteção.
Adapting to these models, to these systems, to these projects, and also adding our way of living, and also always echoing these ways of living, and always echoing the care, the healing, and the protection.
Só para finalizar, duas situações emergem, muitas, tem uma lista grande, longa, mas duas situações que eu tenho tentado avançar é a discussão sobre segurança e soberania alimentar e nutricional e a proteção e salvaguarda dos conhecimentos tradicionais, numa perspectiva das mulheres, porque eu vim desse lugar do cuidado.
Just to wrap up, I want to mention two situations, even though there's a long, long list. The two projects that I work on the most is on accelerating the sovereignty and the food security, and also working on traditional knowledge from the perspective of women and always carrying that healing and care.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christiane. Fantastic perspective and very, very clear. Happy to now pass it to Ariana. Ariana, Build Change has been instrumental in shaping the approach to resilient housing. What strategies have proven most effective in embedding equity and gender responsiveness into your housing and infrastructure programs? If you have key examples, please share with us.
Thanks, Marcia. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Hi, thanks for having me. It's so nice to be here and to share about this. So as you mentioned, Build Change's focus is on increasing access to resilient housing across the global south, specifically for communities living in informal housing. And mostly that is low-income communities who are suffering from exclusion, from systems and marginalization for, I would say, probably centuries, but definitely recent history. And so at the core of our work, really, it is about shifting power to those communities. And we do that through various different approaches to increasing that access to resilient housing. And I mean, we really believe that, you know, a safe and resilient home is the beginning of being able to, have power and dignity back in one's life. We take it from a systems change approach, so we look at the policies and the financing and the technology that's required in order to increase access. And we work directly with homeowners in the communities where we work. And, you know, when we're looking at shifting policy or creating financing mechanisms, it's always through a homeowner-driven approach that really puts those residents of the houses at the center of the process. And there's one example that I'll share. I have more than one, but I'll stick to one for now. So the one that I want to share is there's one from Indonesia, where we recently have been replicating some of our work that we've done previously in the Philippines on creating and developing and implementing incremental loan products for resilient housing upgrades. The ones in Indonesia are looking specifically at extreme heat measures, or to reduce extreme heat, which is quite relevant to all of us here today. I think we could appreciate that. And it's working with women who are living on less than $5 a day. And these women are existing clients of one of the largest MFIs in Indonesia called Comida. And we've been working with Comida to develop this loan product, and also working with our engineering team to develop low-cost technical solutions to reduce extreme heat in their houses. And so this is one example, you know, of this kind of work and how we really try to center these issues. And just to give a sense of you know, some of the statistics that came out of this, in kind of creating this project, we did a survey process. We surveyed over 2,700 of Comida's clients to ask them about their experiences of extreme heat and how it was affecting their lives. And 74% of those surveyed indicated that they had experienced illness or ill health as the result of extreme heat, and 78% had indicated that they were unable to work because of extreme heat. And also, at the same time, another question we asked was related to their willingness to pay for these low-cost solutions, and 70% indicated willingness to pay for upgrades to their homes. So, you know, really from like that approach of going in and speaking to the community members themselves, finding out, is this an issue, and would you be willing, or are you interested in these solutions that we're proposing, all the way through to the way it's been executed. We really try to keep the communities at the center throughout that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Ariana, for the clear examples and also the opportunities and the innovations. Happy to now ask Gabriela. Techo has shown that when communities co-design their own housing and infrastructure, resilience becomes both social and structural. What lessons can global adaptation actors learn from this community-driven model?
Thank you, Marcia. Is it working? Okay. Now you can hear me? Yeah. Okay, so boa tarde. I think we have like 3 findings we want to share. The first one is that we have to go beyond housing. And it's crazy that I'm saying this because what Techo does is houses. But although we think that the house is the human right that warms all the other rights, we think it's not enough. So we have to work with the communities further than that. And we have to realize that also water, sanitation, roads, different things are needed for their communities to be more resilient. So we need to try to figure this out. And the other learning is that we are not going to do this alone. We need to work with several actors. And I think we are now in an age that NGOs, companies, governments, all of us need to cooperate and collaborate to find these solutions and to accelerate the solutions. The other thing that I think is that social resilience is the main thing to build in these communities. Internal organization is fundamental to build up resilience and also to maintain the solutions that we can do with the communities. And the third one, I think, and one of the most important, is to go from building for to building with. These families are the ones that are suffering the climate change effects all the time. They have been suffering them for decades, so they already know how to fix them, how to fix their houses, how to fix their roads, what to do, how to organize. So we have to go to these communities with a clear spirit of listening to these communities. We don't have time to be inventing warm water again. We need to listen to them. And one of the examples was that in the workshops we conducted in these communities, one of the things that always happened was some families were saying like, every time it rains, I have this problem, the house needs improving, and other neighbor could just stand up and say, hey, I already fixed that. I know how to do it. Let's go to your place and I'll show you. So why do we have to listen to them and co-design the solutions with them? Because they know which materials they have. They know how to do it. We have to take that on account. And also because they know how much they can spend on maintaining those solutions. If we are just designing from our desks, many times we use materials they cannot find near their communities. We use materials that are really expensive, tools that are really expensive, and also different techniques that are unknown to them. And many times we fail in that. So we have learned, and we want to share, that the first thing to do is to listen to the communities and really take account on what they are saying so we can improve the solutions. Techo has built more than 150,000 houses through 28 years of history. And now, for the past 2 years, we are building more resilient prototypes. And it's impressive because the families are already telling us, like, we feel warmer in winter and cooler in summer because of the change of the materials. And we also can wait in our houses for the floodings to pass because we are not solving floodings. Floodings are happening. 7 out of 10 informal settlements in Latin America are near to risks. So when the flood comes, the family has to be able to wait inside the house to be evacuated and also not to lose everything, the fridges, the beds. So these resilient houses come to solve those problems.
Thank you very much, Gabriela. We had a fantastic first round in which we heard the critical role and understanding and the power of indigenous women advancing adaptation and recognizing that adaptation frameworks, they are there to enhance their leadership at territorial level. We heard from Mariana that opportunity for accessing to finance, to resolve, that agency, that locally led solutions that can help resolve because of opportunities of innovative finance approaches for resolving and have that inclusion and equity perspective. And as well from Gabriela, that the co-design, the agency, the leadership of the actors matters to recognize truly adaptable solutions, but also the response to their needs. One last round, and I'll ask you 1 minute. If you can share from your perspective, each of you from the different angles that you bring in, what does equitable partnership means so that adaptation can ensure that equity and agency is advanced? I'll start with Cristiane.
Bem, tentando ser bem breve na resposta, até para garantir o tempo das companheiras. Oi. 3 coisas, diria 3 coisas. Escuta, porque nós só aprendemos quando aprendemos a escutar nossos pais, escutar os mais velhos, escutar o tempo, escuta, respeito e consideração. Eu acho que quando a gente traz tudo isso junto, a empatia, a solidariedade, ela transborda, ela flui, ela vem junto. Traria esses três nomes. E aí a gente pode diluir nas nossas ações, né? E, para isso, caminhar para um projeto que garanta a soberania e segurança alimentar e nutricional, porque isso está dentro do nosso dia a dia, está dentro dos nossos rituais, está dentro da nossa tradição, está dentro da continuidade da vida, assim como a proteção dos nossos conhecimentos tradicionais, que é fundamental, porque isso também é identidade. Isso também é resistir à emergência climática. Obrigada.
Você segura o microfone, você já me conhece. I'll talk to you briefly because I want to allow time as well for the other speakers. One very important element is key. You have to be eager to listen in order to learn, because you learn by listening to the others. You need to listen and understand the time as well. You must have respect and consideration. If all these elements are together, along with the solidarity, empathy, this can pave the way for a flux. So we need to change it and transform it into clear and concrete actions, because that will pave the way for safeguard and sovereignty. When we look and we have a change of rituals, this is very important for keeping the traditional knowledge, because this is a continuity of life. Furthermore, we need to save our traditional knowledge. It's very important for us in order to reach a climate resilience.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very, very much. And now, Gabriela and then Ariana.
Okay. Hola, hola, hello. So I agree with everything you're saying. So I'm just going to add that we have to treat everyone not only as inhabitants but as citizens. They have rights, everyone. People living in informal settlements have rights. So when we go to the communities and collect data, for example, we have to share that data with the communities because they need that information to advocate for themselves. We are not going to be the ones giving the voice for the voiceless. They have to speak for themselves. We can be their companies, but everyone has to be doing something. And of course, I agree that the main thing is to pass from information, from projects to action. We need to make everything that is being talked here to go ahead, take action, just make it happen, because that's the moment is right now. We cannot wait no more. Every week we are having emergencies all over the world. So we need to work together and we need to work fast.
Fantastic. Ariana.
Thanks. Thank you. I also agree with everything that's been said. And I think that, what I would add, I think, to that is, I mentioned previously that, Build Change talks a lot about shifting power. And I think that we have to really be clear, what do we mean by that? And if we're shifting power, then who is shifting it? The people who have power are the ones shifting it. And there has to be a willingness to let go of that power if that's going to happen. And that takes courage and bravery and an admission of all the things that have been said previously. And I think that without that, equitable partnerships that embody any of what we've talked about today is really quite hard to achieve. And just to underneath that, I mean, my own experience, and I think of anyone who does this work in a sincere way, is that it really requires an acknowledgement and an addressing of what brought us to this point, the histories of racism and sexism and all these things that are underlying the problematic systems that we're trying to address. So I really think that in order to really show up in a way that advances equitable partnerships towards the goals that we're all trying to achieve, that has to be part of the conversation, and I think those of us who, myself included, who are in a privileged, more powerful position, really do have to be willing to reckon with what it means to shift that power. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ariana, and a round of applause for a wonderful dialogue that we had today, this afternoon, and my pleasure to invite to the podium to Alice Amorim, Program Director for COP30. Thank you.
Thank you, Marcia. Good afternoon to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here representing the COP30 presidency in such an important, critical discussion that we have been talking about throughout the last couple of months, and in particular through the eighth letter, showing that this is an adaptation COP. We are actually adapting. We are all in extreme heat conditions here, so we are literally living the experience that we unfortunately we need to face now. I think it's important to pay attention to the name of this panel, which I found very, very accurate and important, because agency, equity, and inclusion, they are all elements of what we need to see to actually deliver social justice and climate-proof development, right? So I wanted to acknowledge the effort of the Race to Resilience, the Climate Champions team, that have been working for such a long time already, trying to bring this conversation to the COPs, this action on resilience and adaptation to the COPs, but it has been hard. It has been hard to convince others to really balance or calibrate the mitigation and adaptation conversation. And for us, COP30 is a turning point, is actually when all these efforts that has been done in the past is coming to a new phase. It's coming to a moment where implementation of adaptation and resilience is the new normal. It's the new normal for domestic resources, international financial flows, for private and public, for subnational, so mayors, state governors, central governments. It has to be everywhere. But it's not enough to just think about adaptation. We could just put air conditioning everywhere here, right? And solve the immediate problem of extreme heat that we are facing. But would that be represent an inclusion? Would that actually really bring agency and equity? Not really, because the structural challenges that we need to face to actually bring equity, agency, and inclusion, they have to go deeper, much deeper into all decision-making processes in all elements of our life in public policies, in creating the enabling conditions to actually talk about mainstreaming climate in a way that changes the status quo and how the development models are built. So it's very hard, it's very difficult to do that, but when we say that COPs should bring implementation and speed and scale of implementation of adaptation, this is what we are up to. This is what we as Global South citizens have been talking about for a long time, but we have not been maybe necessarily so fast in implementing. And the push that the COP presidency, but the whole process is bringing, we hope to see significant results coming in, not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in next year, in the following year. And that, let's say, as a process, as COPs are a process, a living process, that we see results in the, let's say, next 5 or 6 years that we are proud of, to see adaptation and resilience driving action everywhere. So I actually wanted to thank all the civil society groups here represented that brought so many concrete examples of what's already happening, right? The solutions on the ground, that this is what we need to make COPs much more effective into bringing visibility to those solutions, bringing learning spaces, experimental spaces, because the challenge or the transformation that we are embracing or that we are facing now, nobody has ever done before or experienced before. So we need to learn collectively on the way forward. And that's not just through party processes, that's not through consensus. Consensus that we need to change, it's there. We have already been discussing this in the last 10 years or so. But action, collaboration, partnership is the way forward, because nobody can solve this crisis alone. Nobody can change the world alone. So thank you so much, and do count on COP30 presidency to continue this journey. Thank you.